Okay, this is not this really happened, but it isn't. It's a different display of using your resources.
Yeah.
It's called How I Learned About Leadership.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
I was going to I was in the first draft lottery in 1969. I was in my senior year in college, and my deferment was going to be up the following year. And when
Yeah.
they had the first draft lottery in December of 1969, because of where they pulled my birthday, I knew that as soon as I graduated, I would be drafted. So, and the
Wow.
Vietnam War was going, full bore. So,
Wow.
knowing that, I enlisted, and I served in the National Guard for 6 years. And I was fortunate that my unit was never volunteered for Vietnam, as other states' National Guard units were. But so they sent me away to be trained as soon as I did. They let me graduate. And so right after I did, I went away for my basic training and my AIT training, which is my advanced training. And I was in Missouri and at Fort Leonard Wood. And so that's why this says Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, October 1970. How I learned about leadership. In AIT, my squad leader got sick with spinal meningitis. His stripped bunk was all we ever learned about his fate. The sergeants made me squad leader that day. I hadn't asked for it and wasn't free to refuse. Each morning, I was told to pick 3 men for detail. There were 10 besides me in the squad. 3 were good workers who didn't need a supervisor. 4 would do a decent job if you were watching. 3 would try to hide, get nothing done at all, unless you rode them every second. Results were barely satisfactory. They wore you out with their malingering. The Army could be pleased, and my days easy. Just pick the same 3 guys who did good work each day. Or I could make my life a grind, be vigilant, cajole, coerce, subdue, for all pains taken, average results, except for being fair to everyone.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
It's another one of those ironic narratives that gives you two sides,
Mm.
two possibilities. You can go this easy way,
Mm.
or you can go this
Mm. The difficult.
difficult way. The results are going to be the same, except the difficult way is you might be fair by spreading the difficulty around, as it were. It's ironic.
Mm.
Well, actually, if I had been content to pick the 3 good workers every day, the work done would have been better than what we
Yeah.
were able to get done. Because what I did was to pick 1 from each group
Yes.
each day.
Yeah.
By trying to be fair,
Yeah.
you were brutalizing things more.
Well, I was letting myself in for a lot of work because I had to make sure that the people who didn't want to work at all were forced to. The
Yeah.
people who would work only if you watched them were always watched, while the
Mm.
people that you didn't have to watch could be left to do what needed to be done. And so the result overall was not as good as if I'd taken the good people, but it would have been so grossly unfair to the good people, and it would have
Yes.
let the other 2 groups get away
Yes.
with following their
Yeah.
own ignoble nature.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do that. And so I did what I did. And of course, the result of that was that the sergeants worked very hard to convince me to go to officers candidate school. And I said, well, thank you very much, but I'm not volunteering for 3 years of active duty just because you and I both think I might be able to be an officer. Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Is that? Yeah. It's, I mean, like leading or teaching, which leading is like teaching by example. The worst kind is having to coerce. Isn't coercion the worst possible way of teaching, of trying to learn anything? To have to coerce people into doing that. Oh my gosh.
But that doesn't mean that setting requirements is the worst thing.
Yeah.
You know, insisting that you do some minimal amount of work is not coercion.
Yeah.
It's just
I mean,
you're gonna do this. This is what
there's a difference between teaching and training.
Yeah,
these people were being trained.
That's what it is. Yeah, teaching and training. That's the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I was the one that had a chance to learn something, but they really didn't.
Yeah, but I love that. I love it's right at the start of the poem, that moment when the way that this line, his stripped bunk was all we ever learned about his fate. Mm-hmm. That image of that stripped bunk, that emptiness that makes you have to step up into that role. That's such a great image for. Yeah. Just to lead that. I love that. That got me straight away from the start.
Yeah, again, that's the literal thing. When if somebody gets sick, they're taken away, and even if they recover, they never come back to the same unit, because the time that they spend away puts them behind in the training. So they go to a different unit that's, say, in week 5 when you moved on to week 6. So there were 40,000 people on that base. I never saw that guy again. I don't know if he lived or died.
Yeah.
Spinal meningitis had forced them to close the fort the winter before. There had been many, many cases, and people had died. So I never found out what happened to that guy. But I was not eager to become the squad leader.
Yeah.
But I wasn't not free to refuse.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, I just love the image of a stripped bunk. Is that like synecdoche? Is that the word for when something represents something else? Just one part of, or is that something else?
It's a metonymy.
A metonymy,
isn't it?
I'm just getting my terms sorted out.
Yeah, it's a metonymy, because a synecdoche is where a part of something stands for
a part of something,
the rest of it. Metonymy is a part of something stands for something related to it. So the professor is correct.
So the stripped bunk, just the stripped bunk is a kind of metonymy. Okay, I got my terms sorted. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Good one, Al.
Well, thank you very, very kindly. This is really just it's a small lesson, but nothing like the ones we've been going through so far. So let's see where we're going next. You are you're ready.
Yeah, well, this goes back. I mean, this winds back to, for me, this winds back to where to the start of being a mother and now being a grandmother. And I remembered, I think this is what I heard, that Greeks call their grandchildren, their grandchild, their twice child. I love that.
Twice.
The grandchildren are a grandchild is your twice child.
Yes.
And now I know exactly what they mean by that. It's like your child has somehow like multiplied. Now you've got two of them. Your child and the grandchild is your child too. It's really bizarre. But when I first heard that, I wrote this for my granddaughter, who's now 4 months old, but before she was born. But we knew what her name. We knew that she was a girl, and we knew, and my daughter had already named her Matilda. And but I was just thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, this is so different. I was only 24 when I had my daughter. But now, 40 years later, it's just so different now. I mean, I hadn't even gone through that Thurul experience. I was still at uni. I was still young when I had my daughter. So all the stuff, all the waters flowing under all the bridges since then, what would I say now to this granddaughter, to my twice child, that I couldn't possibly have given to my original daughter? Yes. Because I just didn't know these things yet. So I wrote her a poem even before she was born, and I'm sure I'll write her many more, but this is the first one for Matilda.
Yeah. That's all right. Damn it, why isn't this going up?
There it is.
You got it.
Yep. For Matilda. Sound throws down a hammer, and gravity sinks in. Wind dances off with the leavings, and I don't know how to begin to tell you the truth about truth, how it marches along the trail, how it drifts on a current without any effort to raise a sail, how after the fact you must cut it back to a shiny brown nub, how the lamp stays a polished lamp no matter how hard you rub, how you zip your tent at night against the mosquitoed air, how you dream of an ancient jetty and a skeleton under there, how the lip is a slip of the tongue and the tongue is a lover's knot, and the end of truth is a metaphor and the end of a rose is rot. So don't try to tell it, Matilda, or it will look like a lie. Just show your face to the golden sun as it drops at the edge of the sky.
We feel that a child would enjoy hearing this, even if she didn't quite understand what it's about. And in fact, there's lots of mystery in this poem. I think the fact that it's a riot of anapests really, really makes it work. We don't see anapest as a foot employed all that often nowadays. There must have been a culture that used it a lot, but ours hasn't. Am I right in that, Dave?
Yeah, I think that is true. But anybody it's very interesting when you notice how people are using meter in the contemporary world. A lot of people are using meter in a very fixed and staid way, and what they're not doing is just hearing the music. And if you're just hearing the music, sometimes the mixture of feet will be really pretty astonishing. You know, Robert Frost will do this. As I came to the edge of the woods, thrush music, hark.
Yes.
Now it
Yes.
was dusk outside, inside it was dark. So there's a sort of tripping meter in the poem that is consistent and song-like and musical all the way through, with those alternating rhymes.
Yes.
And they're emphatic, but then there are the unrhymed lines that spring out of it. So it's a kind of poem that Frost would have really responded to just for its music. And I respond to it just for its music.
Well, the first thought to me is always music. What music is this? And it was for a child. It's how do you speak to a child? What do they respond to? And that's what they respond to. Yeah. And I'm singing just not. Lewis Carroll knew this. I mean, the songs I sing to Matilda now, I just put any words in there, but you just keep the beat going, just keep the rhythm going, and it can be anything, and it just ends up being hilarious what comes out of your own mouth. It's a great prompt is just have a baby and talk to the baby and forget just for 10 minutes, forget about making sense. Just go with the rhythm. Go with the rhythm. It's astonishing what it unlocks.
Well, it kind of explains what you get in Lewis Carroll, doesn't it?
That's exactly right. That's right.
And like Lewis Carroll, every image in this poem actually makes sense. It flirts with nonsense. It flirts with the unconscious. Sound throws down a hammer. Well, there's that thing that, even piano keys do. But gravity sinks in, wind dances off with the leavings, and I don't know how to begin. How do I start?
To tell you about what truth
and what is throwing down a hammer? Throwing down a hammer also means I'm going to quit work and I'm going to start playing. It's Thor throwing down his hammer, but it's also hammers down. Time to quit work. Let's play. Let's have fun. All that sort of stuff. I love this.
Again, it's like, for me, the rhythm works to undercut any affirmative knowledge. It's about not knowing, not understanding. It's really,
Right.
for me, what rhythm does. What if you concentrate? What if I had to say what it's saying? It's really about negative capability. That just forget about knowing and trying to find certainty, because it's not going to happen. You know, the ability to live with doubt and uncertainty, and without any irritable reaching after fact or reason. And that's what poetry is magnificent as, and why it should be a core learning thing in schools, because it lives in that negative space. It's so Buddhist in that sense that it's so appreciates and values unlearning, twisting away from the truth, slipperiness, not being able to tie things down. And that's, you know, the substance of what I would want to say to a child now that I couldn't have said so well when I was only 24 with my first daughter. I don't want Matilda to think that she has to know anything, that the truth is something you can know. Just be open to it. Just show your face to the golden sun as it drops. That is, be attentive to death, and you will be safe in this life. If you are attentive to the end, then you are safe in this life.
But there's a lovely doubleness in it too. The end of truth is a metaphor.
Yeah.
Well, okay, the end of truth, that's a metaphor.
Yeah.
The end of truth, the telos of truth, is a metaphor.
Yeah.
And truth ends in metaphor.
Yeah.
And so the reflections, there's a hall of mirrors of reflections.
Yeah. And I really think kids love that. I think kids get that. Somehow it's something that we lose when we go to school and we get into that training you were talking about, Al. Instead of learning, so much of it becomes training. You get channeled and trained, and you lose that wisdom that you had when you were young and you knew this stuff. Why do we lose it?
Yeah, you know, you're framing the poem around the word truth, but the state in which the discussion of it, for me, comes down to mystery, and the child instinctively trusts mystery.
Yes.
And without reducing mystery to a problem that has to be deconstructed and solved, that you have. I have a short poem in my first book about a geode that I have a geode about the size of a football, and I know that inside it there are probably fantastic crystals, but the gist of the poem is I would rather leave it unbroken and imagine all the possibilities than break it and reduce it to one.
Yes, absolutely.
And so this is it.
Yeah.
You know, that let it be. And yet when we get into our adult lives, I think we lose. I mean, even what we think of as mystery, when we go read a mystery, it's already been prepared to bring us to a conclusion that explains things. That's not mystery. That's artifice. So we need mystery in our lives, and we need to preserve our reverence for mystery and our comfort with mystery, instead of our perpetual assaulting it to make it give up its secrets.
Yeah. And I think one of the great mysteries, and one of the magical mysteries of all, is language itself. So for me, that the poem is just a play with language. If you're playing with language, that's where the great magic happens for me. Language is magic. And I love, like with my own daughter, I mean, she was just literally brought up, just fed through her ears and her body, the Dylans. I call them the Dylans, Dylan Thomas and Bob Dylan, because those two guys, they just follow the sound of the language. They're not trying to make sense. They're just following the sound of the words, and they're playing with language. So Dylan and Dunn, that's what we gave her, because we throw in John Dunn, because he just does these amazing things with syntax and and argument making and syntax. And then if he needs a word, he'll just pull one out of nowhere and make it up, you know. So it's playing with language, which is the most magical thing you can give a child. The sense of language as play material. Play with it. It doesn't have to be right. It's a play thing.
Your granddaughter's very lucky because she's going to get this.
Oh,
is she ever? She's already getting it. And she's looking at it.
Terrific.
She does. She looks at me like this, and then this smile comes on her face, and it's just joy. You know, it's just joy. At the moment, we're just doing sounds like but she mirrors. She's imitating already. If I go she'll go then I'll go and she'll go. It's just amazing. It's amazing what you can do right now, Al. Right now, at 4 months, even earlier.
I'm glad that you're getting a chance to re-experience this. As I said before, it's something that I'm almost certainly never going to experience myself. But I can tell it's one of the glories of being alive.
Yeah.
To live through that with a child.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
I'm glad for you guys. Good for you.
Thank you. But speaking of language and playing with language, Davey's next poem is doing this too in another way, and I think this is really interesting. Davey?
Yeah, well, there's so many ways that you can play.
Exactly.
Yes.
So this is Davey's playing with language in a different way.
Oh yes, I remember this.
Yeah.
Hangman. A big chief tablet and a bic between us on the car's back seat. The scaffold drawn, and underneath a code of dashes in a row for 7 letters. Part of a stick figure fixed to the nooses O for every letter missed, until if I'm not careful, my poor guy will hang with X's for his eyes. My brother parlays his resource for big boy words with taunting skill. It starts with D and rhymes with force. But I don't know the word. Don't know the wet world being slapped away by wiper blades, or why the day moved like an old stop-action film or an interrupted TV show about a family on the lam. I let myself be hanged and learn a new word whispered out of fear, though it will be another year before I feel the house cut loose, my dangling body, and the burn of shame enclosing like a noose.
Wow. Wow, Davey.
True story, more or less.
Wow.
Kids' games are deadly.
Yeah. But what a conceit to use. I mean, what a great conceit to use that, to talk about that, to show without telling the incredible distress and pain of divorce.
Yeah.
That affected on a child's life. I mean, that's so clever, that conceit, really. Yeah, beautifully done. So skillful.
So there's a moment in I can't remember if it's Anna Karenina or War and Peace. At any rate, it's the character of Levin.
It's
Anna Karenina. Yeah.
It's Anna Karenina. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Isn't how he proposes to his wife?
Yes, and it's done with it's done with some kind of wordplay, letter play.
I've got to reread that.
It's on my list to read.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
yeah, that's right. Oh my God.
Every 10 years, because you're in a different place in your life. Every 10 years, you get a whole different set of shadows from the statues in that book.
Wow. Yeah, I've got to read. We both think that with time of life running out, what do we need to read again? And that is seriously one book I'll read again.
Top of my list.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's much sound in this, in the language of this poem. I love. There's so many great lines. I love, but I don't know the word. Don't know the wet world being slapped away by wiper blades, or why I love that little that stanza in there. The wet world being slapped away by wiper blades. I mean, we all know that I remember that so well from childhood, just watching, mesmerized, the wiper blades and the wet. That brings me right back to being a child. Just an image like that takes me there.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what we can learn.
But I mean, it's not, the language is not soothing.
No, no. That's right. No.
It's sharp.
That's
It
right.
is
It's
sharp.
sharp. Yeah, a code
That's
of
what
dashes. Yeah.
So when I read
That's
to you
great.
very briefly, Dave, and said that I read your poems and they bristle. This is one of the examples that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, yeah. Part of that line at the top in the first stanza, Al, part of a stick figure fixed. I mean, stick figure fixed.
Yes.
That whole words, just as you say, just bristles. It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
Stick.
It's
Yeah.
not what is it from what is it Keats says in Argosy, transferred from Fez or silken Samarkand to cedared Lebanon.
Yeah.
He's got this. I mean, you know, you've got a toffee in your mouth and you're licking the taste out of it when you're saying those words.
Yeah.
You've got
right.
thistles in your mouth when you're reading
exactly.
this.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
What's next from you, Al?
Well, this is quite different. This is very new,
Oh.
and but it has to do with I've been getting involved in some tutoring lately, and so I was back to reviewing old textbooks and looking at how subjects are taught and being put again into the place of the student, trying to make sense of how the subject is taught. And so this is called chapter review.
Yeah, got it. Yep.
Have you learned what's covered in the chapter? There are exercises at the end to let you show how well you can apply the concepts to related situations. To see if you've gotten answers right, your teacher can consult the answer key. The instructor's textbook has a section in the back containing all the answers. Your dearest wish may be that you could see them, especially if you don't understand what's covered in the chapter. Sometimes even you can't tell what it is you're being asked exactly. Maybe if you knew the answer first, you think, then it would help you find the way. But if you didn't learn what's in the chapter, you'd still be sunk when they say, show your work.
Yeah.
Knowing the answer doesn't count as much as knowing what you know and what you don't, what you've been asked and how to find it. The finding has to be there in the looking.
That is so true about learning. That's so good to lay that down, Al, because that is so true.
It's just like there's a genre of poems that are almost like instructions for doing something.
Yeah.
And this is like one of those poems.
Yeah.
It's like, this is how
to
you
do.
read, how you do it this way, not that way.
Yeah. But how you learn something. This is how you learn something. Have you learned
I mean, part of my strategy in talking with a student is to say, well, what did you let's look at a question. what are
Yeah.
you being asked?
Yeah.
What part of the chapter is this question asking you about?
Yeah.
Let's go back to that part of the chapter, because they're probably not going to ask you a question for which they didn't prepare you to answer earlier. Let's find where that is.
Yeah.
And so many, as a student, particularly when you're young, you never think about what you know. Sometimes everybody knows what it's like to take a quiz and think they did well, and to find out later they didn't. That means you didn't know what you knew.
That's right.
So, and that's something to think about. You know,
Yeah,
you got to say,
absolutely.
well, wait a minute, what do
Yeah.
I know? Okay, and then it's how do I know it? So, you know, so let's go back and find the place where we
Yeah.
learned this thing that
Yeah.
answers this question.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing at the very end, knowing what you know and what you don't, what you've been asked and how to look for it. So when you get a word problem, sometimes people, they read the word problem, they have no idea what they've been asked.
Yes.
So how do they know where to go to find how to answer it? So I'm trying to take the strategizing to a higher level instead of just down there with looking at the words.
Yeah.
And so, but it is a larger thing about how we learn things in general, that we have to, you know, we have to be progressing in a direction where we learn that we already know the answer. This is the Platonic thing. If you look at Meno in the dialogue in which Socrates talks to the slave boy about the Pythagorean theorem, and he just asks a series of questions, and the slave boy answers a series of questions, and by the end, he's shown
he knows it already. Yeah,
and Socrates says you know this, and it's a deep thing about talent or genius that I was really brought home to me when I read a quote about Andres Segovia, who when he first started to play and went to a teacher, the teacher was talking to somebody and says, he doesn't learn, he remembers.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, I'm sure that there are so many people listening, because there'll be writers and poets and language people, that I can remember so vividly from being really little and going to school and being in the middle of like writing little essays or stories, and I'd write down a word and I had no idea what that word meant or where it came from. And I would have to go to the dictionary and look up the meaning of a word I'd just written down. And sure enough, that was the word I was looking for. It was like, I used to get freaked out. This is when I was young, before I'd read Plato or had any knowledge that Plato said that we really are remembering, that learning is remembering. There's something there already. That happened right through. And then my own daughter used to come to me when she was like 8, 9, 10 years old and say, Mummy, I just used a word and I don't know what it means. And then I looked it up and it was the word, and I would go, oh my God, that happened to me when I was little.
Yeah.
It's weird. You really get the sense of you learn something and you go, I already know this. I know this. It fits with something that's already there. It's so weird, isn't it?
Well, and also after we learn, in a larger sense, after we learn a lesson, for example, we're still capable of repeating the mistake. That puts us in a position to learn it again.
In my case, misspelling a word.
Also, it's also true that we learn a truth and then later we relearn it again in a deeper way.
Al, you're singing my song. I wrote this down to say, I actually have a word for it. I call it my corkscrew theory of knowledge.
Yeah.
I just think a corkscrew it's going round and round in exactly the same spot, but with each revolution, each time it returns, it's going deeper and deeper and deeper. That to me is what learning is about. That's why I've got no problem with repetition. I think people shouldn't think of repetition as boring or I've done that. No, do it again. It will never be the same when you do it again because you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. And finally, that's going to come out and you're going to have a bottle of wine. You're going to be so happy. I got to get the Kelly corkscrew theory of knowledge, of epistemology. Corkscrew epistemology. Let's coin it today.
Yeah.
Well, although you're coining it now, I'm going to give you an example of this from about 100 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
When Picasso was living in Paris in the 20s, Arthur Rubinstein, the great pianist, used to visit him in his studio.
Wow.
And he used to visit him on a fairly regular basis. And so he would see him maybe every couple of days. Over the course of a couple of weeks, he noticed that every day Picasso was doing a still life of a bowl of fruit on a table. And so the studio was being filled up with paintings of the same fruit on the same table. And so he comes in after a couple of weeks and he says, Pablo, you've been painting the same bowl of fruit every day for 2 weeks. How can you do that? How can you just keep repeating yourself? And Picasso got very miffed, and he said, "What are you talking about? Every day, the table is different, the light is different, the fruit is different. I am different. I never do the same thing twice."
Exactly. I did not know that little anecdote, but I'm glad to hear it.
It's a good one. And Rubinstein tells it in his autobiography as a way of explaining how he let that attitude inform him. Because, of course, as a classical pianist, you've got to play a lot of the same pieces your whole life.
Practice, yeah.
And they're not rewriting the Chopin Fourth Ballade. You got to play what Chopin wrote. So how do you return to what looks like the same activity and recreate it?
That's right. Well, it's like Cézanne was the same thing with his mountain, with that mountain that he just used to go to every day and paint the same thing. Because it's true, it's never the same. I totally agree with Picasso on that. It's not the same. It's not the same moment. It's not.
Right.
And practice.
No,
one of the great, Blake said, all art is practice. It's not like you practice and then you're perfect and then you start doing the art. No.
Yes. No.
All art is practice. You don't wake up day as a maestro and then it's perfect. It's just you're practicing. And it's practice. Practice as in just doing the same thing over and over. Practice. That's what it is.
Well, and the right temperament involved in that activity is expressed really nicely by one of the great basketball players for the Detroit Pistons in the 80s, Isaiah Thomas, who said, "If you love to play, there's no such thing as practice."
Yeah. If you love to play, I thought you were going to say there's no such thing as boredom, because people will say, well, that's boring. It's not boring. There's no such thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so what everybody's calling practice. No, you're doing it. You're doing it.
You're doing it. Exactly.
You're not getting ready to do it. You're doing it. So.
Yeah. But the other thing I just wanted to say about your poem, about what it's saying, about how we learn what we know, I just think the best thing, you know how I was saying some negative things about universities earlier on, but I will tell you this, and this still holds true. The great thing about universities, which is still the great thing and will always continue to be, there's only one great thing about a university, that's the library. If all you learn when you go to university is how to use the library, you're set. You are set for life. So really, about learning, what I think is that, and this is what I taught my daughter when she first got into uni, I said to her, go in there, go straight to the library, find a librarian and ask her to show you around and how things work. And if you ever get stuck, if you need to know something, go and ask a librarian. Don't go and find your lecturer or your tutor or one of those professors. Go and find the librarian, because she will point to you where the information is, where the books are that you can learn from. All you need to learn, to give somebody, to equip them for learning in this life, is to tell them, go and ask someone. If you don't know something, ask someone. You can't sit there and it suddenly magically pours into your head. What really intelligent people do, they know what they don't know and they go and ask someone.
Right.
It's so simple. Yeah. It's so fundamental. But so many kids leave uni without having a clue how to use the library. They've missed the whole point.
That's unfortunate. But we're covering great. I mean, we're really getting some good work on this topic. So this is...
This is well, we'll speed through this. So my last one then is just about, really, it truly is about maybe what I've learned and how I've learned. The sun's coming through and how I've learned. It's all right. I can just sit here in the shady bit. This is called passing the time.
Hang on.
Passing the time.
Hang on. Okay.
There you go.
Passing the time. I like a clock, but I don't like one that works. I like fleeting moments of sky and dirt. I don't like the part of me always riding the brake. I like going past it into the palace of mistakes and looking through the rain and hesitating like a feather when someone opens the door. I like how stories end and their light goes on forever. I like all kinds of hullabaloo and small things to eat and dawn. I like singing in the car with you all the way home.
Yeah, that's so fresh.
Basically, that's after nearly 65 years, that's what I've learned about life.
The palace of mistakes.
The palace of mistakes.
I love the palace of mistakes is wonderful.
It is. It's like, this is why I know I've been coming back to that the whole time through this thing, is that failure and mistakes and getting it wrong and falling flat on your face and humiliation, this is the palace of mistakes. This is the glory. This is the learning.
Learning isn't the clock that works.
No, it's the...
Yes. Yeah. Well,
that may be when I first write that down. I like a clock, but I don't.
Yeah. That's a line.
And then the line break. But I don't like one that works. Yeah.
Yes. Well, one of the things I like about this poem is that the number of things that you like is much greater than the number of things that you don't. There are only 2 things that you don't like, and there are about 8. That's
the only thing I don't like is fear, is riding the brake, is being, as we've talked about this, about transgression, being cautious, going, oh no, I'll just ride the brake. I'm a bit, it's like hesitating without just fully giving yourself to something, you know. That's what I don't like. I talk to myself when I feel that happening. I think, nah, put up the brake, off you go. And I really think, seriously, Al, singing, singing is just the great joy of life. Just sing. Even if you don't let
American society is so far fallen from the various cultures that came here. the European ones, the African ones, where music was something that you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
singing was
Yeah.
something that you did. You did it, or you made music in the home, in the family, or you
Yeah.
sang. Or
Yeah.
I was in Italy in 1972 on a train, and there were about 50 of us in this train compartment. And all of a sudden, the entire train compartment started singing O Partigiamo, Portame Via. They're all singing.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there listening to this. Everybody's singing.
Yeah.
And then when they finished the song, a couple of women said, "We have another verse we made up for, for feminism." And then they sang their verse. So it was like, this does not happen, in America the way that it might. There still is, there was, when this happened, a restaurant in Providence. It's an Italian restaurant in which you sit at metal tables with 5 other people, 6 people to a table, and they put you together with strangers. You're not in a booth.
Yeah.
And you're in a big room and you're sitting with strangers. And I was with strangers and eating, and about 3 tables to my right, an old fellow with a flat cap stood up. And we all looked at him. And he started singing. And he sang something. And he finished. And we all applauded. He tipped his cap and sat back down.
Isn't it
Not
great?
many restaurants where that's going to happen.
It's just
I
so
was
great.
I was in a carload of Greeks in New York, heading out into Long Island in search of a restaurant that served garides, shrimp, and that the old sculptor at the wheel of the car, with his big bushy beard, you could barely see his eyes poking out of his facial hair. He suddenly started singing. He's driving us through the night on Long Island. Kratis atizoimu. Everybody in the car starts singing. They're singing George Seferis. They're singing, I've kept a hold of my life, kept a hold of
No
my
kidding.
life, traveling. It's a song of exile. It's from a poem called Epiphany, 1937, I think. Anyway, that kind of experience can be had in many, many, many places. But it's got to be when you're with people who can be moved to music, and it's a lovely thing when it happens.
Yeah. Singing
Wow.
singing with other people, singing together is just one of the profound experiences in this life. We do it a lot here. We've got a whole lot of singing.
A lot of musicians on our road here,
and we get together. There's Irish people, and everything comes out. The instruments come out, and it's just a blessing that I know
That's the way it should be.
is going to have singing and people's voices in the air, the feeling in the actual air, not listening to recorded stuff out of boxes or speakers, but the experience of the vibrating air of human beings in harmony. Harmony.
And the vibrations for you within your body.
Absolutely.
As you're singing, because your body is vibrating in a chord.
Yeah.
You're right. It's a great thing. We should do more of it. America has got the wrong idea.
Yeah, it's everything to me. It's
typically.
Yeah. So anyway, that last one was just about that was basically my statement of my life. What I've learned.
That's great, though.
Yeah. It's a statement of poetics among other things.
Poetics too, I think too.
Yeah.
So my final poem is my longest poem. It's 3.5 sonnets. It's a poem about that begins with a lesson from an Aboriginal guy who comes around the homes in this area and teaches people about cool burning, or cold fire, as I call it in the poem, which is where you make small fires to help eliminate the risk of a big fire, because fire is our biggest fear here. So you make small burn on the land, and you bless the land and you bless the animals, and you give the animals a chance to get away from your fire. and you study the fire, you watch how it crawls on the ground, and you watch how it moves in relation to wind or not wind, wet and dry, and all that stuff. And so we've been practicing cool burning, cold fire here. Anyway, the poem begins here with such a scene, with this indigenous fellow helping us learn about it. And then it moves away to where I grew up on the West Coast, the Northwest of America. And then it sort of returns to what I'm doing in writing this poem.
Put it on the screen, please,
Oh, yeah, put it on the screen. Yeah. I'm sorry, my skills with
This is important one for me, because it's something we haven't touched on, but it's very important, and that is that in the world we're living, today's world, it's about what we need to learn from Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous knowledge that has been sidelined and just dismissed, and it is profound.
cynical people will say you're being sentimental, but
No,
I know enough to know that's total bullshit. They're just wrong.
Yeah.
Totally wrong.
Right.
People who know how the land works are
and
really
have known
special.
it for thousands of years.
Yeah. Cold fire. The man about to set the ground on fire casts an eye to a flicker in a gum tree. Grandfather, a yellow-throated honey-eater. His claimed relation, knowledge, or mystery shames my scientific doubt. His burning brand purifies with smoke each blade and twig we see, offers a blessing to every ant at hand, warns the beetle to move now, cold fire coming. He says cold fire will creep across the land and nudge echidna out of her dark homing. He says the fire is slow, but animals should run. He kneels to earth, half singing and half humming. Grandfather looking on, cold fire will come. Bow down to the smoke, cold fire will come. Across the ocean, in the ring of fire, lived a people native to the rain. The old volcanoes rose up high and higher, bald snowy domes above the farming plain, the wet cathedral forest streaked with light that hardly touched the floor. I'm there again, in soil so deep it seems to build the night from rotting cedars, chaos of meshed limbs, the spider webs like filaments of mind. These are the makings of my native hymns. My breath clouds nakedly in air like smoke. Cold fire inside me, outside me. It climbs as the eye climbs on the updraft of the smoke. My breath is rising like a cloud of smoke. Basalt crystals like organ pipes in snow. Snow melted back in wells around each fir from the body heat of tree. And deep below, the drum of permafrost began to stir. The drum would sound when people walked upon it, a beat of boots among the roots and heather, and every mountain rose up to its limit. One could not tell the water from the wind, or from the breath of all that moved within it. The burn was sunlight where the air grew thin. The firs hung down their beards of Spanish moss and hid the winking ruin of a mine. The glaciers calved in water, fresh as loss. Down through the years came water, water and loss. Cold fire discovers as it moves. It is no saint, and martyrs nothing that it touches when it burns, the twigs and bark, leaving a trace of faint white ash and the game and birds will feed upon. I burn a cold fire here that runs in lines, a sound like laughter and the hurt that learns. Cold fire takes and teaches, and it talks in signs until the fire and smoke are gone. And then it sings.
Wow.
That is just extraordinary in so many ways. We'd be here all day. Davey,
It's big.
signs and sings.
It's an anagram. It's an anagram.
It's the
rhyme.
same
Yeah.
letters. We're just talking about singing. Signs and sings is the same letters.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is so, I mean, that's just a profound pop. That's just huge.
Well, this is a poem that has to be lived with.
Yeah, it really
It's not
does.
enough to read it. To read it,
No.
or I'm glad that I can hear it. But
Yeah.
it's
There's
got
so
to be lived with and turned over and over,
Yeah.
and worn out in the touching,
Yeah,
because there's a lot here.
there's so
Boy.
much there. It is. It's epic in its the breadth of it, the depth and breadth of it. It's epic. It's only a page and a half long, but it's epic.
Yeah,
So-
and the language is so
You just want to.
it's so
dwell.
dense.
You just want to dwell. But
Yeah.
it's also what's it called? It's your theory of poetry. What's that word?
I don't know.
One's theory of poetry.
Whose theory of poetry?
Anyone's art.
Oh, ars poetica.
Ars
It's ars
poetica.
poetica.
That's me. It's an ars poetica, Davey.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing. I mean, and it condenses into the final part. I mean, I burn a cold fire here that runs in lines. That's poem.
Yeah.
That's the poem. A poem is in lines.
Yes.
I burn a cold
Yeah.
fire here that runs in lines. A sound like laughter, and that's that beautiful musical voice that you have. And
Yep.
the hurt that learns. I mean, that's beautiful. Hurt that learns. I mean, that's what we've been talking about here. That's that we've been concentrating
Yeah.
not on fact-based knowledge, which is a good thing. Facts are fabulous, but we've been focusing on the emotional learning, the hurt that learns in this thing. It's just so beautiful the way you've just said
Yeah.
that learns
Yeah,
using that
and-
same sound, using the same.
And the whole the poem, also the words of the poem are burn, and they're
Yeah.
cold on the page.
Yeah.
So the words are the cold fire.
Yes,
Uh,
it's such a
Yeah,
metaphor for this.
that's what I
because-
mean. Yeah, you won't exhaust this
No, that's
by
that's
a few readings.
no,
This is a
that's-
great accomplishment, David.
It really is. It's just like it just takes your breath away, and you go, "Okay, master."
Yeah, you don't you don't
I know.
stumble across this going out, for a quart of milk.
No,
It
that's
takes
right.
it
No,
takes it takes a lifetime in the art,
yeah, exactly.
to
Oh,
get
absolutely.
to get this strong.
Yeah, that's what I say to the stuff he's writing these days, Al. I mean, I just say to him every day or every time he produces something, this is a lifetime. There's a lifetime
Practice.
to be well, again,
Yeah.
that's what he would say to me.
Right.
It's practice. If you do this for a lifetime, this can happen.
You-
But it takes
You know,
that.
while we're talking, because I know you have a new book, if you have it handy, put it up on the screen.
Oh, I don't know if we have it handy, do we, Dave?
Oh, it's somewhere here.
I can't see
I didn't mean to drive you away.
But no, it is. It's I think what about the metamorphosis?
Excellent, great.
Book of essays
There's a
too,
book
but
of essays too.
I don't have that one here.
Yeah, there's a book of it, but that's the most recent poetry book, Pacific Light. But
Yes.
he's got a book of essays called Metamorphosis and Incarnation.
Incarnation and
Incarnation and Metamorphosis. The book of essays and about how literature can change your life, or asking the question. But anyway, I think we're sitting with a master here, Al.
Yes. Well, I'm not giving you an argument.
You're sitting with a practitioner.
A practitioner. Yeah, that's right, a practitioner. But
Well.
yeah, but it is the most amazing thing that metaphor about coal fire, because we're used to thinking that fire burns and it hurts, but when with the the practice of cold fire, which we practice here on our property and which the Australian Aborigines have been doing for 60 million years,
Yep.
is as soon as the fire
60,000 years.
60, did I say million? I'm prone to exaggeration.
No. Really?
But Al, when the fire has gone, you can instantly walk on the ground with bare feet.
Yeah.
It is cold.
Yes.
There's no heat in it. It doesn't burn the ground. It just burns that loose litter on top, and you can literally stand on it with bare feet, not a heat.
And it is that loose litter on top that can catch and start a much larger and more destructive fire. And that's why it's important to shear that away by this practice.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
So
great. Thank you.
Well, boy,
a treat.
But sensational way to end your part of the proceeding. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I should say, as I think I mentioned in my email to you, David, that of all the shows that I've done, and I've done, I don't know, almost 30, yours has had the most views. So people will be seeing and hearing this, I would venture to say, as we move forward. So great.
I hope they enjoy it. I hope they enjoy it. But I want to hear your last one. What one have you got?
I'm in no particular peril. Well, this brings me back to the idea of a teaching moment. This was, in my 25 years of teaching, the premier teaching opportunity. And because you never know when they're coming, and so you never know how you're going to react. But this is a narrative, and it seeks to capture what was a different. It's a different real experience for everyone who lived through this time and this moment, but it shows where I was and what I was doing and in a position to do during 9/11. I didn't write the poem in 2001, but I did write it on the anniversary on 9/11 in 2015. And it's called How I Learned About Self-Determination. And at the time, I was teaching in a private school. I had a music class for 9th graders. I had English classes for 10th and 12th graders. And this was early on a Tuesday morning. If you remember, the first part of the news that came to us came just after 9 o'clock in the morning. And when the first tower was struck, but then there was quite a stretch of time before the second tower was struck. And so there was a lot of uncertainty and confusion. And what I talk about in the poem is how different times were, that we didn't all have instant access by phones or any other means. So we were in a position of trying to find a way to learn what was going on in the world around us. So how I learned about self-determination. The period began just after 9 that Tuesday. Students tumbled in knots, as usual, before the bell, but lacked that energy so skittery and edgy expected from 9th graders, new to school, each other, adolescents, to themselves. Instead, there roiled unspoken currents in the room. It bumped and bubbled like a lid that barely caps a full pot's rolling boil. An energy I'd never felt before in decades running class. They'd heard about attacks, planes crashing, skyscrapers in flames in New York, from TV news reports in other classrooms. Teachers had stopped class. This was before all students had devices. Not linked to cable, TV sat on carts with VCRs, without antennas. As in my childhood, they only got 4 stations. No matter, this would be on any. They asked, if we could watch the news instead of having class. On any other day, that would have been a game to lure me off my course. I would have smiled, but gone ahead. Today, I acted differently. I asked if any of them had a family member, friend, or anyone they knew of flying into New York that day. No one did. I said then, if I put the TV on, how long would it take for you to tell if they're reporting something new or if they're just repeating what we've heard before? A minute, someone said. They all agreed. All right, I said, I'll put it on. A minute. You tell me if something new has happened. If yes, we'll watch. If no, we're having class. We watched. It was before the second plane struck the South Tower, in that awful lull. The kids said no. We turned off the TV. The class becalmed. Eye of the hurricane.
That's exactly it.
Just makes me cry. I've got tears, Al. Just
Well, the only thing that I knew they needed was to have a sense of power over their immediate reality.
yeah.
And that's why I made them engage with the news, make a decision about it, which brought them away from their emotional reaction. And then express it and have that expression govern what we all did next. So I gave them a certain small bit of power in a day in which we all felt nothing else but powerless.
And it got even worse.
And yes, I know it definitely got worse. I remember later in the day, an older student came by me in the hallway and said, "Mr. Basile, is there going to be a war?" And I said, "I can't say that, but I can tell you that life as we know it is not going to be going back. It's going to be changed." And that's one of those situations where you know enough to tell the truth that you wish weren't true and you didn't have to tell.
I'm so sorry, Al. That's just wow.
Well, I've never had a better opportunity. I mean, imagine,
Yeah.
at least I had 15, 14-year-olds
Yeah.
that I could try to help.
Yeah, you could hold them for a moment. Do you know what, when I got to the end of this, what came to me, and I just remembered again, it came to me again when you got to the end of it now, I thought of that Emily Dickinson, that one, the Emily Dickinson that I really love. It's one of my favorites, the one where it goes, in this brief life, is it short life or brief life that only lasts an hour, how much, how little is within our power. And
Yeah.
to me, that's something that you're showing in this poem, that, as you said, nothing is within our power, but there is something that's within our power. In that moment, you had power, the kids had the power to turn it off. You had the power to give them the choice to create that space for them. How much, how little is within our power. And I think that that's just always true in every moment of our lives. The power we have.
It was a completely sealed experience for that 42-minute period.
Yeah.
And once they made their choice and we turned off the TV, we had a very normal class. And that sense of skittery energy was not there. They were calm. Now, I'm sure once the bell rang and they went out of the room,
Yeah.
everything came rushing back.
Yeah.
But we had these few minutes of a stay for
Yeah.
grace.
Yeah. Which can be everything, which can make all the difference in the going forward.
You know, I go to alumni events at my old school, and I guess that would have been the class, probably the class of '95. So they have reunions of the on the five, you know, on the fives and the tens. But I've yet to talk to any former student that was in that class to ask them what they remember. If I would suppose that they remember,
Yeah.
but I'm curious what they remember.
Yeah. Well, maybe one day you'll have a Mrs. Vitt experience where one of them will find you and say, thank you for what you did that day or something. I'm thinking that out there they are like that, because the other thing, and this is where I hope to get to, and you're just proving it with what demonstrated what you did in that poem as a person, as the person you are, and what you made happen, what you recreated that moment in the poem, is something which is the thing that means the most to me. And the last thing I want to say, the final thing I want to say, is what Dickens said in Our Mutual Friend, and I stand right beside him and behind him and with him on this, and that is this: love is in all things a most wonderful teacher. Love is in all things a most wonderful teacher.
Wow, it's a great quote.
Well done, Al.
Well
I
done.
will only add. I'll only add one little. Thank you very much. I'll add one other little thing, and that is, I have been Mrs. Vitt many times.
Ah,
I've had many students who were bad actors. Not that you were a bad actor, but
I
who
was a
saw
bad actor.
themselves. Well, they saw themselves as bad actors and were frequently on the wrong side of the law at school, and people that I had to discipline or that I had to behave in one way or another, that felt that they were letting me down, that have come to me in years since, and I've said, no, you were no trouble.
yeah.
You know,
Oh,
I
that's
used to say over and over when we had meetings, we had faculty meetings, and faculty in their frustration would complain. We'd talk about students at the end of each quarter, and we talk about each student in the school. So it took a while. And the faculty would get frustrated with certain students, and they'd express that frustration. And the comment that I always made at those meetings was, folks, it's high school.
yeah.
If they were mature and grown,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be in high school.
Yeah, that's right. They're kids.
So if you were in second grade, Dave, you know, she knew what she was getting coming through the door on a daily basis.
Yeah. I know, that's just gorgeous. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, thank you again. I knew this would be.
We love this thing with you.
Oh, I could just keep out just like last time. I mean, we'll sign off now, and I'll just think of the 1,000 other things we could have talked about it that still could be said, but they're all in the air. We know. It's
I knew it would be nourishing, and so it has been.